Okay, I think it's recording. Okay, I think it's recording. Hi, Karina.
Hi.
So today we're going to talk about collections. This is like, that's one of those credit topics where I think a lot of people have issues, but they just don't know where to go. You know what I mean?
Right.
They don't know where to start. So I want to welcome everyone. I have the credit queen with me again today, Karina Simon. And
Thank you.
so today, again, we're going to talk about collections. So just for, I would say, people who, I'm sure everybody knows what collection accounts are, but Karina, if you don't mind, just for educational purposes, if you could just maybe explain to people exactly what a collection account is.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, say you have a particular, whether it be a credit card or an installment loan of some sort, and you fall behind, you're delinquent on your payments, typically at about the 120-day mark, that particular company will either sell your debt to a third-party debt collector and they'll charge it off, or they will also charge it off and bring it to their in-house collections department. So it's essentially a delinquency, typically around 120 days, where you have not made a payment, and now the account is closed and you are indebted to this company for this amount.
Right.
And that's typically with, auto loans, student loans can go to collections, any type of trade line, credit card that maybe you have maxed out or didn't pay, all of those things can be charged off and gone to collections.
Okay, so let's talk about how to handle a collection account on someone's credit report.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I love to recommend, and I also kind of want to debunk some myths in this process as well. So one of the things that I hear, or I've been made privy to, that's floating around sometimes, is that once an account is charged off due to your delinquency and sent to collections, you don't owe it. And that is completely false. completely false information. So the first thing, if your debt has been sold to a third-party debt collector and you're receiving phone calls or you receive that first point of communication in the mail, the first thing you want to do is you can send a cease and desist, more so meaning, please stop contacting me via phone. I only want to correspond with you via mail, right? This is always, you want to deal with debt collectors in writing. You do not want to engage with them over the phone.
Exactly.
So if they're calling you, you don't need to verify any information. What they are doing is trying to collect more information than what they actually may already have on you to further pin you down, into owing this account. So first, I would say ask them to stop calling you in writing. And then the second thing is you want to do what's called a debt validation, or send what's called a debt validation letter. You can Google it. There's so many variations of it. There's different ways people like to do it, but at the end of the day, it's essentially requesting that they validate this debt and their legal right to contact you to collect on it. Because there are certain things that debt collection agencies must have legally in order to demand that you pay them. So it's not so much a matter of, do you owe this money? It's you forcing them to prove to you that you need to pay them.
Right.
Does that make sense? So basically, cease calling letter, cease and desist letter, and a debt validation letter would be your first steps. Please do not, when you see a collection hit your report, fork over the money. A lot of people do that just to get it over with. Now, I do want to add this. It does depend on the time frame that you're in and what you're trying to do. So many people are in the market for a new home.
Exactly.
So yes, I will, and we can touch more on it kind of later in the conversation, but I do want to say, just in flow of this, if you are in that short window of time where a collection hits your report and you're close to that closing date, or you're within 90 days of, buying a home or something, your back is against the wall. You don't have as much time. I still say fight it, but I do want to say that you may have to settle and just pay it, because a paid collection looks better to a lender than an unpaid collection, but it does not help your credit score at all.
And that's important right there. That's very important.
Yeah.
So that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Can paying off collections can that raise the credit score? Because, a lot of people think sometimes if I pay my collection off, maybe that's going to raise my credit score.
Right. So no, that couldn't be further from the truth. So this is how I like to explain it, just as simplistically as possible. Once an account has the mark of a collection, the derogatory mark of a collection on your report, it's forever bad. If that makes sense. Paying a collection never makes it look good. It only looks good to a lender or an underwriter who wants to see that you pay off what you owe.
Right.
So from a credit scoring perspective, it's permanently a derogatory item until it either falls off or it's removed through credit repair of some sort. So yeah, I've seen people pay off thousands, tens of thousands of dollars worth of collections debts and charge-offs, and their score go up 5 points, 6 points. I've even seen the score drop. And the reason why the score could actually decrease, this happens, quite frequently. The reason why the score can decrease is collections are tricky. They're a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. So they're bad, right? No matter how you slice it and dice it, but they are contributing to your credit age.
Exactly.
So if you are someone who has, I don't want to say the majority, but you have a sizable amount of collection accounts on your report, in addition to positive accounts and, good things on your reports, and say through credit repair or just through the aging of those accounts, they fall off, you're also losing the age associated with those collections that was kind of helping your score a little bit.
Right. So for instance, if you have new credit cards for the last couple of years, but you have this account, that's a collection that's been, let's say, 5 years.
Yep.
And then you end up paying it off and it's off your credit report. So now it looks like you have only had established credit for the last couple of years.
Yes. And there is something I want to clarify too, that is another misconception. If or when you do find yourself in a situation where you do need to pay the collection off, it's been validated, it's 100% accurate and verifiable, or you're rushing because you need to close on a property, right, in a short amount of time. Paying off a debt in collections does not remove it from your credit report.
Right.
It will remain. So that's really important to know too. A lot of people will say, well, I paid it off and it's still there. Either the original creditor who has the collection in-house or the third-party debt collector, they are in no way obligated to remove that from your report unless you negotiated a pay for deletion up front. Even still, they play games.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
You brought that up. That was something I was going to ask you about too. So let's kind of touch on, the original creditor versus the debt collector who may have bought those accounts.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I love to break it down this way. So we will use Chase. I see that Chase, Navy Federal, you name it, right? We're just going to name a credit card or banking institution that also has credit cards, right? So you had a Chase credit card, $5,000 limit. You charge the card $5,100. Okay, you never paid it off. It went to collections. They charged it off, meaning they counted it as a loss, and now it's with collections. Now, some of these credit card companies have in-house collection departments, so it just went downstairs, basically, or upstairs, okay? But oftentimes, or a lot of times, these companies will sell the debt for pennies on the dollar to a third-party debt collector. And that third-party debt collector, all they're doing is buying a portfolio of data. It's literally a portfolio of hundreds of thousands of names, phone numbers, and balances owed. And that's all they have on you. So going back really quickly to when they call you and they're like, can you verify your name, the last four of your social, your birthday? They may not even really have that information.
That is so true.
I'll tell you this, just kind of an inside scoop with collections. When a collection agency buys a portfolio from an original creditor like Capital One, Chase, Toyota Motor Credit, BMW Financial, whomever, when they buy a portfolio, the more data they buy in that portfolio, the more expensive it is.
Exactly.
So
and
if
they're not trying to pay.
So it's like, am I going to pay 10 cents per person and just get the name, the balance owed, and maybe an address? Or am I going to pay a quarter per person and get pictures of their ID in the original contract, or 50 cents per person with the original contract? And keep in mind, it adds up when you're buying bulk data of 10,000 customers, 5,000 customers.
So then that's cutting into their profit.
Exactly. It's really, capitalistic society. It's all about money at the end of the day. That's the bottom line. So with credit bureaus and debt collectors. So just tying it all together, The original creditor, is the party that you initiated your original contract with, whether your contract for the credit card or the auto loan or what have you. And then the third party debt collector is who they sold it to if you defaulted to the point of delinquency.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically an unpaid collection, well, that's a question actually. So an unpaid collection, will it be removed from a credit report? You know, some people feel like, okay, well, if I don't pay it and it's been so many years, you know, the 7 years, it's just going to fall off.
Yeah, so typically, yes, it should. And if it hasn't, and I want to be specific, it's 7 years from the date of first delinquency. That's a little caveat that's not often mentioned. Most of us know about the 7-year credit reporting period, right? That's federal. But you also have to think about the statute of limitations from state to state. So I will use Texas for an example. The statute of limitations on a debt in Texas is 4 years. In Louisiana, it's 10 years. In states like Michigan and New York, it's 6 years. So the difference between the 7-year credit reporting period, when any account for the most part, except inquiries, will age off, and your statute of limitations is, as long as a debt is within that statute of limitation for your state, you can be sued for that debt. So we can use Texas, but I want to use a state like Louisiana because there are several states where the statute of limitations is longer than 7 years, just so people know. So for instance, in Louisiana, let's just say you had a collection account. It's been 7 years from the date of first delinquency. It's fallen off the report. Amen. Hallelujah. Right. Well, you're still within that 10-year period of the statute of limitations where that original creditor or debt collector, they can try to sue you if it's between that 7-year and 10-year mark, if they want to reopen it and, you know, light that flame with you.
Right.
So, so it's important to be mindful of that. Texas, it's 4 years. You know, we're a little bit more lenient or a little shorter in our state, but that's something to keep in mind.
Okay, so can a collection agency, can they report old debt as new debt?
No. And so that's considered a violation. They cannot re-age debt. Like a debt collector they can't re-age it without some activity that warranted it. And so a lot of third-party debt collectors will do that because they know that they are, you know, re-aging it and hurting your score even more. Because I'll tie this in. A collection, the older it gets, the less weight it has on your score.
Exactly.
Typically, anything derogatory within the last 2 years is hurting your score the worst. So if you have a collection from, let's see, we're in 2021. If you have a collection from 2015, it's 2 steps away from going out the door, right? In a year and some change, or in a couple months. That's not the reason why you have a 500 credit score, right? That collection from way back when. It's the late payments, you know, or lack of
that you're currently making, or that was within the last couple
within
years.
The last 2 years.
Right.
Yeah. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was agreeing with you.
Yes. Yeah. So it holds more weight. The more recent it is.
So let me ask you this: how can a collection be removed without paying it?
Yep, it can be under certain circumstances. So it happens all the time. You know, I don't want to say in any credit restoration process, but in a credit restoration process handled appropriately. So, or of course, if someone seeks legal counsel as well, and the attorney that they work with, you know, finds some type of violation as well, if someone wants to take it there. But before we even get to that point, through disputing, through finding inaccuracies and unverifiable data, or if that third-party debt collector is unable to validate the information, those are the loopholes in which you can find opportunities to have it removed prior to 7 years. But there's a strategic flow in how that works. Some people, which I discourage it, but I understand, you know, people are going to do what they want to do. So some people will go to Experian.com, TransUnion.com, Equifax.com, and they'll just dispute the collection online. There is I can't even say a 50-50. Of course, sometimes it happens where it's removed, but a lot of times, excuse me, it will be removed and you'll think it's deleted, and really it's suppressed because they're looking into it. And then it comes right back on your report.
Right back on. Exactly.
So I discourage, I mean, just with anything, I discourage from disputing online in general, because you're also waiving away some of your rights to escalate. And that's in the fine print that a lot of people don't know about when you dispute online. So it's kind of like you're taking a big risk. If it gets deleted, great. But when it doesn't get deleted and it comes back, or if they just tell you, no, we're not deleting this, this is correct. Now, if you want to escalate up to the FTC, the attorney, general of your state, all these different things, you've kind of basically taken away your leverage by disputing online.
Exactly.
So
there's a
I would
box
go snail
online
mail.
that a lot of people don't realize if they check it off, they're giving up that right to dispute.
Yep, you're giving up that right. And you can dispute it again, but the leverage is taken away and it's recorded that you've already attempted this online. And I like to pretty much put it this way. Anything that seems like it's designed for our convenience as a consumer is not for our true benefit. It may seem beneficial to us. Oh, we can go online instead of snail mail, waiting 30 days for them to respond and the back and forth. I can just go online. Yeah, and you also can't escalate to the highest power if you ever needed to or wanted to on that particular item once you do that online.
Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, of course, yes, if maybe you get an attorney involved, they can fight for you in that way. But the likelihood of most people doing that on your everyday debts or things where at the end of the day, that's really your debt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now it's different if you've been fully violated, it's identity theft, or some company that maybe you owe $4,000 is saying you owe $40,000 and they won't budge. I mean, something egregious and blatant, and you have documentation. Absolutely, you can bring on an attorney and they can, fight for you in that way. But outside of that, I mean, if you're not finding violations of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA, or errors in how it's reporting to your credit profile from the credit bureaus, your options are few, because how items are actually removed is you finding inaccuracies and unverifiable data to point out.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's one of my other questions is about documentation. A lot of times people do not have any documentation. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's imperative. You should keep all of your documentation, because
everything.
It helps in a situation where if you have to dispute something and you have documentation.
Mm-hmm. Even something as simple as a late payment, like there's so many late payments that could be resolved if you have your original statement or access to go into your account online, see the due date, and then you have access to your bank statements, and you can compare and say, hey, the due date was the 5th and I made my payment on the 3rd. Where is this late? Like there's so many things that could be prevented or resolved if you had your documentation. Even when a debt collector sends you that first communication, when they open the debt, they have to communicate with you in 5 days of opening that debt and attempting to collect. Okay, that's a part of the FDCPA. When you receive that in the mail, you want to respond immediately with your cease letter and with your debt validation letter. And here's the reason why you want to do this. I just say immediately, but really it's within 30 days. Because the law states the debt collectors are not obligated to validate after 30 days. So if you get a debt collection letter today, what is it? April 1st, let's just say it's April 1st, you get this letter, you're like, I'll deal with this later. I can ignore calls really well, whatever. You wait until July 1st, and then you start demanding that they prove this to you, and you read up on debt validation, and you're like, I'm giving you 30 days, I'm giving you 15 days, and they don't respond. They don't have to validate anything. If they do and they respond, they do, but they don't have to anymore. So that's why timeliness and having your documentation together is essential.
Right. Yeah. So what 3 things do you want to leave with people today when it comes to collections? 3 tips that you want to leave with people in terms of collections.
3 tips. So the first thing, which I think I covered though, but the first thing, do not immediately pay a debt that you see has gone to collections. Do not immediately send over money. That would be the first thing. Demand a validation of the debt. The second thing I would say is, I'm just trying to think of something I haven't already covered. The second thing, as it relates to collections, do not be afraid to escalate up to the FTC, which is the Fair Trade Commission. Federal Trade Commission or the Attorney State General for your state. You can submit a consumer grievance there as well, based on the debt collectors, if they are not budging. This is after having tried to dispute it, though, whether it be yourself or with a credit restoration company. That is a point of escalation that you can utilize. A lot of people give up after a couple of letters. So I would say that's a second tip. The third tip would be, check your credit reports, and this ties back to a standard tip, but monitor your credit to see if they are re-aging or updating the date of last activity or any communication with your collection on file. So you may have a collection from 2016 and it shows the date of last activity is 2016 because that's when they bought it. And then you look at your report again and it says the date of last activity is March 2021. And you know you've never talked to them. You're really just riding it out until it falls off.
Right.
Definitely pay attention to your reports because you may want to dispute and have this information removed. They shouldn't be there's been no updates.
Exactly.
So that's them trying to refresh it to show more recent activity that doesn't exist. So that's really important.
Okay. Well, as usual, Karina, you have done a fabulous job on making sure people understand credit and especially collections, because that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Especially like for me, dealing with people in real estate who are looking to invest or, buy property, period. Some of them have collections. And so credit is something that people are always trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I fix it? And I'm glad we have this discussion. So as always, where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're welcome to visit my website. It's www.godeluxefinancial.com. If you're in need of a credit consultation, want us to take a look at your situation to learn more about, a better path for credit building or disputing or what have you, you're welcome to book a consultation there. Of course, we also on our website offer our credit restoration services, or you can follow me personally on Instagram at ms_Karina, and that's Karena.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, Karina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.